on a volunteer basis. So we're really, really grateful to them for their support and kindness. Would like to bring to your attention that the next session is on employment on December 10th. So that's work supported by the Ministry of Advanced Education. And we have a series of 6 webinars up and coming if you're interested. So just to let you know about those. And really what we're trying to do is just to support clinicians and managers who are responsible for providing psychosocial rehabilitation by transferring evidence-based knowledge, providing expert clinical consultation, providing training and education through events such as these, developing our website resources, and supporting the Provincial Advisory Committee and the community of psychosocial rehabilitation practice. Should you ever have information that you would like to share with us, should you ever wish to do a webinar on a particular topic, please do let myself or Matt know through the PSR Advanced Practice website. We're always looking for emerging practices, good practices, so please do let us know if you're interested. And just a little bit more detail about our upcoming webinar series running from December 10th to December 27th. And this, I think, is a fairly unique opportunity to bring together information and expertise from the disability movement, so for people who may be living with developmental delay, and the psychosocial rehabilitation, and for people who are living with mental health and substance use issues. So we are trying to build on the work of BC Advanced Practice on employment and try to bring you some concrete and evidence-based practices that will help your work. So we look forward to you signing up for that. And on the issue of saving the date and new upcoming events, please put this in your calendar for June 15, 2015, from June 15 to 18. Very excited to announce for the first time our national conference. So we will have a call for papers soon. If you're interested in presenting or interested in attending that conference, we will be, as usual, in the Coast Plaza Hotel Suite. So we will have the regular conference, and also we will have a day dedicated to both employment and to housing section. So we look forward to hearing from you about that. So on to our today's presenters. We have first up Sue Gerries, who will introduce in more detail in a moment. Allison Koci. Didn't do that right, but Allison's going to correct me properly in a moment. Regina. We also have help from our dear Pat Parker, who is a family member who's been involved with our committee for a long time. You'll hear more about that in a moment. And she's going to be our good timekeeper today. And Matthew Lang, as you've heard from Matthew a moment ago. So first we have Sue, who is a registered psychiatric nurse and has a master's in healthcare and leadership from Royal Roads University. I happen to know that because I have one too. And Sue has worked both as a nurse and as a manager within mental health services for several years, and is currently the coordinator of staff education at Mental Health and Addictions in Vancouver community. So welcome, Sue. And Allison has a very long list of letters behind her, but suffice to say, Allison is an amazing expert who graduated from UBC with a Master of Sciences in 2013. Her undergraduate studies focused on exercise science, wellness, and recreational therapy. She's been practicing as a recreational therapist for over 15 years, both privately as a consultant and as an employee with Vancouver Coastal Health. She's worked with children, youth, adults, all of whom live with serious mental health and addiction issues. So welcome, Allison, as well. And I'm just going to ask Matt to pull up the next set of slides so we can begin a formal presentation. And I'm going to hand it over to Sue to begin the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we're just going to get our webcam going. Oh. So just give you 1 second here, and over to you.
Okay, thank you for having me. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge Vancouver Coastal Mental Health and Addiction Services for their support in this project, engaging and supporting wellness, using the dimensions of wellness to promote systems change. Okay, in Vancouver community mental health, we noticed that there was a discrepancy in the lives of the people that we were working with, and so we thought that we needed to create a wellness committee. And I would like to take some time at this time to thank the people who participated on this committee. We had the members are all listed here, but we have members, physicians, family members, peers, peer support workers, nurses. We have a dietitian. We have the whole gambit of people, including Regina. Regina and I actually co-chaired this committee, and we're kind of at a hiatus right now, just trying to get our position paper together so that we can. So this is really a first go on our position paper and what it's going to entail. So, so we recently developed a draft series of position statements and recommendations for this topic. The document reviews the literature on best and promising practices regarding health and wellness services for the people that we work with. We draw on the work of this 25-page document for our presentation today, and we look forward to hearing from your feedback. So the session and objectives. First of all, we're going to provide a brief overview of our context, define the dimensions of wellness that we're going to be speaking to, briefly review the evidence from the lit reviews, and identify some recommendations, and hopefully there'll be lots of discussions. We'd love to hear from you. Okay. So we're going to ask for your participation throughout the session. Please note that we might be only to take half of the comments each time. However, please do write their thoughts and questions in the comment box, and we'll review them even if we've missed them during the session. So thank you. Okay. Before we began our committee, we noticed in our community, we observed through observation and literature, there was weight gain, reduced life expectancies, poor models of care, poor access, and stigma among our clients. We looked at best practices for people who work and live in the community. And we also went to the Canadian Focus on Recovery for some evidence and some practices. So there was a great sense of community urgency to move forward, as the decreased longevity is the largest and the most important disparity in this area. So we do know that 60% of the deaths in mental health and addiction are preventable if there was treatment modules that were available to them. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure are rampant in the community. Schizophrenia and obesity are schizophrenia clients have 2 times the rate of obesity than regular people, if I could say that. Smoking is 1 to 3 times. It is increased 1 to 2 to 3 times. I'm sorry. I'm not reading these very well. And we also know that the second-generation antipsychotic medications have become more highly associated with weight gain, diabetes, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. There is a sense of urgency to move forward. Okay, what we know now. During our work in this committee, we came up with some, and this is what we know now. We know that people living with mental illness and substance use have often unmet physical health concerns that negatively impact their mortality. There are good public and economic costs for investigating well promotion and preventative interventions. Recovery-oriented PSR programs should include lifestyle modifications necessary to achieve a return to good health and to mitigate the effects of chronic disease. Peer facilitated management training is effective in reducing symptoms while increasing hopefulness and quality of life. Okay. It is accepted in the literature that people who live with mental health and addictions die 10 to 20 years earlier than the citizens from physical issues. 60% of this could otherwise have been prevented. The Mental Health Commission of Canada says the goal is to improve health and well-being for all and to create a mental health system that can reduce disparities and meet the recovery and well-being of the needs of people living with mental health problems and the illnesses and their families.
Thank you, Sue. So back to Regina. So we've given you a lot of information there, and we just thought we'd do a little bit of a check-in. And we're going to ask you a question, so we're going to ask you please to type your answers. And as promised, we will attend to as many responses as we can. If we miss anything, we promise we're going to go back over it at a later date. But we want to ask you, how do you define wellness? We've talked a lot about wellness, and so we're just going to monitor your typing. And how do you define wellness? Our thought here is that it can be a pretty complex idea or concept. And so we just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And this is why we're asking you, how do you think about wellness? How do you define it? When physical, mental, and spiritual health are optimized. Thank you, Eileen. That's a really cool definition. See it very holistically. Balance in social learning, living, work, well-rounded life. Thank you, James. Nice to see you, James. Sandy says the ability to work, laugh, and play. Like it. Kim adds an active process of making choice towards healthy and fulfilling life. Well, I think that certainly we can agree that although we're using some different words, we're certainly on the same page. The ability to engage in meaningful activity as chosen by the individual. Thank you, Laurie. You're on. As an occupational therapist, I'm hearing you there. Michael says the subjective term varies from individual to individual based on a continuum. Clients have really helped me to define it. Access to good, wholesome food. Tara says optimal level of health, well-being in all dimensions, satisfying quality of life, doing things for yourself, and able to act on your own dreams. Dreams, there we go, awesome. Okay, attaining a level of functioning within the individual's limitations, finding meaning, enjoyment, fulfillment. Absolutely. So keep those comments going. Thank you. I'll just share with you what we prepared. As wellness not being the absence of disease, illness, or stress, but the presence of purpose in life, active involvement in satisfying work and play, joyful relationships, a healthy body, and living environment and happiness. And this is a definition offered by SAMHSA, adapted from Dunn. So I think that looking for the whole person and all the needs, individuals having hopes and goals for their life. So I think we have some very similar ideas of what we think wellness is. $90 million question. How do you define well-being? So here we have a concept that kind of looks the same, but might be a little bit different. So help us understand a little bit, how do you define well-being, please? So I'm just going to look for some typing, and then I'll share our definition as well. Again, our definition comes from SAMHSA. So well-being, just looking for some thoughts about well-being. Talked a lot about wellness, well-being. An internal sense of self, worth, and purpose. Contentment, purpose, and meaning in life. I love the whole focus on meaning in life, and I think often as clinicians, kind of hard to have that conversation sometimes. We're so very busy identifying goals, aren't we? Thank you, Tara. I'll just look for one more comment, and then I'll share our thought. Being satisfied with who you are, wherever you are. That's good life, I think, mantra for all of us, I guess. Hope for today and strength for tomorrow, and Seville offers balance. So wellness means overall well-being, and that to me is a little bit of a quagmire of how to define well-being, but it incorporates the mental, emotional, physical, occupational, intellectual, and spiritual aspects of a person's life. Each aspect of wellness can affect overall quality of life, so it's important to consider all aspects of health, especially important for people with mental health and substance abuse conditions, because wellness directly relates to the quality and the longevity of your life. So I think that's a little bit of a summary, putting wellness and well-being. So well-being to me is kind of how you're living and enacting the notion of wellness. And wellness to me are kind of the components of what makes up a healthy well-being life, if any of that makes sense. But some different concepts that are certainly related, but I think as we're developing services, understanding some of the differences and the similarities between those concepts, it's useful. I talked about SAMHSA, and here's the long version of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So if you haven't met this website, I really encourage you to have a look at it. You'll see the address in blue below. And SAMHSA have helpfully identified 8 dimensions of wellness that include emotional, environmental, financial, intellectual, occupational, physical, social, and spiritual. And we'll go through those a little bit more in the next slide. So what they do is they lay these dimensions out with a short definition for each one, beginning with the emotional, coping effectively with life, creating satisfying relationships. And in your earlier definitions, I think many people capture that notion. Environmental, good health by occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that support well-being. I'd like to bring you to maybe the last emergency department you might have been. I'd like to bring you to the last supported housing place that you might have been, and maybe considering those environments in terms of health and wellness. We have work to do. Financial, satisfaction with current and future financial situations. Intellectual, being recognizing creative abilities and finding ways to expand knowledge and skills. So I think honoring the fact that we know that people who live with mental health and addiction or substance use can and do learn and have satisfying lives. And while that sounds like a very, very strange thing for me to say on a webinar, in truth, historically, we haven't always honored that idea that people can learn and participate in satisfying lives in intellectual and other dimensions. Occupational, looking at personal satisfaction and enrichment from one's work. And we have broadened that out a little bit to look at not only work, but activity participation in general. Physical, recognizing the needs for physical activity, health, foods, and sleep. We've broken that into 3 parts. Social, developing a sense of connection, belonging, and well-developed support system. And finally, spiritual, expanding our sense of purpose and meaning in life. And from the comments, it seems that people were really focused on that more holistic sense of purpose and meaning in life. So thank you. We're going to ask you a little bit about what do you think is the relevance of these dimensions? Some comments, some thoughts. What do you think? Maybe first time you've heard it, maybe you've heard these dimensions before. Help us understand what you might think about them. So maybe just some short comments about your thoughts. What do you think? So I see multiple attendees are typing, so I'm just going to give that 1 or 2 more minutes. One more minute. Sometimes it takes a moment for the type, and then they all come in at once, and then I have to read so quickly. I'm getting a little better at it, but it's a little tricky. So I'm just going to wait 1 more second. What do you think about the relevance of these dimensions? I love that meaning of life. I think it's also a holistic perspective that looks at biopsychospiritual. Thank you, Michael, for bringing us back to the concept. They are all important parts of PSR, Monica adds. Cool. So I'll just add, as more typing comes in, that we observed that they were a good start. However, we wanted a more pragmatic approach to these dimensions. We wanted to have practical applications and consider how we might apply these ideas in our work setting. Consider how we might shape our development of practice and how we might begin to look at outcomes in a more practical. So just Maria says, I think it's good holistic assessment, addressing all dimensions, helpful for practitioners to conceptualize as a way of organizing the assessment. Absolutely, Maria, so support you. Without a good assessment, it's hard to go to the next step. Eileen Ann's, they offer a way to break down the broader notion of wellness, so we focus on specific aspects that can be practically examined. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to move on. If we miss any of your comments, I apologize. We will distill them after the session for sure. So just let us share with you the next section of the presentation. We'll consider each dimension of wellness and identify what the literature says and articulate recommendations with regard to our organization and the work that our committee did. So just so we know where we're going. And we will begin with the emotional domain, which really we thought about as coping effectively with life and creating satisfying relationships. Without the opportunity to experience a sense of connectedness in unique ways is often a starting point for individuals in recovery. I'm getting my 1 moment timing, so I'm nodding because I'm acknowledging that I have another minute to finish this slide, so thank you. It's often a starting point for individuals in recovery. And people with mental illness and substance use issues may need support for everyday activity participation that provides a sense of belonging, an opportunity to build skills, and a means to contribute to others in society in meaningful ways. And I do want to bring your attention, please, to workbook by Dr. Terry Krupa et al. You'll see the reference at the bottom here. And I do want to also highlight that we have 2 amazing examples that I can think of off the top of my head locally. The first of which is Get Set and Connect program, part of SAMHSA Vancouver Burnaby branch, and Open Door Group, a nonprofit mental health organization, for example, demonstrating efficacy in helping people connect with others in communities of their choice. If you were to make a recommendation around this emotional domain, what would you recommend to your organization or more broadly? What might you add? Tara adds Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our basic needs to be met so that we as humans can nurture a mental spiritual development. Thank you. So I'm just going to leave that question up because I really have to stop, but I'm just going to share our recommendations with you. We have thought providing opportunities for service users to attend one-to-one sessions for social groups, strength-based skill development and acquisition to manage emotions, could be through DBT, psychotherapy, cognitive behavior therapy, self-management services such as RAP and Copeland. We'll come back to that again. But certainly literature indicates that for people engaged in WAP and wellness programs, that their service needs may be reduced as a result of that around health and wellness. And then offered opportunities for people to seek support for challenges and develop skills to effectively manage conflicts. So thank you, Matthew, for responding to some of those comments. I appreciate that. We're gonna look at those a little later, but now I'm just gonna move to Allison, who's gonna bring us to the next domain. Any second now. There we go.
So the environmental domain is about occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that support well-being. Trauma-informed literature proposes welcoming environments, for example, buildings and staff, help people feel safe and subsequently quickly engage in services. Considering sensory modulation information shows promise in helping people remain engaged in treatment during times of crisis. Services settings with the least possible physical restraint is a desirable means to provide choice and opportunities for maximum self-determination. The environments that people occupy have important implications for promoting health, well-being, and service engagement. For example, people can thrive when given a choice of neighborhoods in which to live, learn, love, and recover and work. The availability of usable green space in which people can actively participate seems to positively influence mood and may serve as a useful consideration when designing recovery-oriented PSR services. Also, under environmental domain, you also should be considering things like occupational health and vocation and programs that are in nature and providing outdoor experiences. So environmental recommendations that we thought of were to provide welcoming and non-threatening spaces for learning, contemplation, relaxation, and service delivery. Encourage service users to express needs, preferences, and emotional responses, either negative and positive, regarding care environments to promote engagement in care. Clinicians will be trauma-informed and help clients to develop and identify strategies to reduce environmental distress. Help people access environments of their choice within their communities. So part of that can be in care conferencing and asking your clients what kinds of things do they like to do, what makes them happy, and provide those things for them in their actual care. So what might you add or delete, and what literature or experience might you draw from in order to make those recommendations? So while you're adding to this for us, I can give you an example from the Assertive Community Treatment team. We have got 2 camping trips a year that actually includes a whole bunch of different kinds of the domains that we're mentioning, and allows people to create their own care within that camping trip. And it's 12 weeks prior, before the camping trip, that they get to add to that. And then when they're actually camping, they experience nature, they talk about their experiences and what they're going to do in the future. So that's a type of environmental recommendation. So some of the things that people are talking about here are housing issues are big in our city, and there is lots of screen space though. Mental and spiritual connections through cultural activities such as First Nations, sweat ceremonies, smudges when appropriate for individual clients, and or through their church if religion is important, can build an additional correct connection. Matthew states fantastic points. Thanks, Matthew. Very important to integrate and acknowledge the importance of culture. So the financial domain is also one that is about satisfaction and security in one's current and future financial situation. The mental health systems rarely attend to this issue despite the need to help people secure, manage, and plan for their future and build self-sufficiency. Successful money management interventions will incorporate people's recovery-related motivations to acquire financial management skills as a means to direct and assume responsibility for their finances. So poverty remains a significant issue for people who live with mental illness and substance misuse disorders. Many individuals who live with psychiatric disabilities have annual incomes falling at or below the poverty level. Only way to alleviate this is to help people earn money and to help manage that. So some of the financial recommendations that we have are to recognize that the profound impact of poverty and other negative social determinant rests and provide opportunities for service users to attend skill development groups for financial literacy, for example, financial planning, budgeting, registered disability savings plan, offer group support to deal with emotional aspects of living in poverty, and encourage asset development and contingency plans for times when people are less well, and access support and advocacy regarding expected changes and challenges regarding disability supports. So one of the things that Mary writes is, affordable, safe housing is often an issue in our community, definitely a lack of supportive housing everywhere for those with persistent mental health and or substance use issues. So we ask you, did we miss anything? Did anything surprise you here? And I'd like to add that one of the things that we have within our community mental health teams is an IPS worker, which is an individual placement and support person who helps clients individually find jobs that are within their realm. And it's a one-on-one placement, so it actually works really well. And we also have them on the ACT team in terms of helping them with their mental illness and addiction as well. Says multiple tenants are typing.
So the important tax credit.
So Amy says the importance of the disability tax credit and the BC fuel tax credit for persons with disabilities. Doug, while I don't buy this argument, how do you respond to the assertion that people living in poverty do not have any money to manage? So there is no purpose in teaching them money management skills. And Evan, Clubhouse offers supported employment through social enterprises. Thank you very much. One thing Vicki adds is I could add vocational support services have assisted some clients to further their education, leading greater financial freedom. Absolutely.
I was just going to add something. It's Regina, but I had the great privilege of speaking with Judith Cook last week, who you may know is an author of editor of Psychosocial Rehabilitation Journal, and her position is very much that, you know, in terms of how can we help people save or take care of their money if they don't have a lot of money, and her response is very forcefully, people will never get out of poverty unless we help them manage the money that they have. It's, I think, a good response.
Thank you. So we'll move on to intellectual domain, developing cognition skills and supports knowledge, creativity, and lifelong learning. Evidence indicates that using cognitive remediation techniques alone produced robust improvements in neurocognition. However, additional functional improvements are realized when combined with PSR interventions. Evidence indicates that supported education services contribute significantly to both academic success and recovery. Supported education in conjunction with supported employment services also contributes to improved academic and vocational outcomes for persons in recovery. Cognitive rehabilitation in conjunction with PSR interventions effectively increases self-efficacy and well-being. Schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders can cause a decline in attention, memory, and problem-solving skills. While some approaches aim to remediate the underlying impairments, approaches here use paper and pencil tests and drills and other interventions aim to ameliorate the impact of impairments, might use, for example, cognitive supports, such as reminders and/or adapt the environment. And one of the things that has been something that really helps people with schizophrenia are things that actually are providing structure during the day. And it can be an intellectual cognitive experience, like an art program or something like that, where people can actually express themselves. So our recommendations for the intellectual domain were supported education, which includes high school completion. Campus supports, including access to peer-to-peer support, should be available to clients. Cognitive rehab interventions in conjunction with psychosocial rehab. Cognitive stimulation therapy for older adults with mild or moderate dementia. These interventions may also be helpful for people with depression, anxiety, and those experiencing transitions along with cognitive challenges. Support lifelong learning, sharing of their ideas, and helping people keep abreast of current issues and ideas. So that could be collaborative support programs of New Jersey, for example. And support ongoing and training and research activities for clinicians who are skilled and interested in this area of practice. Vicky. So one of the questions that Vicky asks is, can you give an example of PSR and cognitive remedial therapy? So an example would be to see the psychrehab.ca for excellent webinar on cognitive rehab by Kathy Wong, who also works in Vancouver Coastal Health, and the Community Mental Health and Cognitive Rehabilitation, March 5th, 2014.
Woohoo.
Thank you. Moving it on to Regina.
So thanks very much to Allison. I know she's feeling a little under the weather today, so I'm just so appreciative for your amazing contribution. You're a wild woman. Thank you very much. This is great. Thank you. You do really well. Thank you. So yeah, Vicky, just coming back to that, please have a look at that. That's a really good webinar. It's about an hour long. Kathy Wong, one of our very early webinars, and she gives tremendous resources and examples around cognitive rehabilitation. So lots based in the literature. She's quite an expert. So I hope that's of help. All right. So I know that I'm being backed and being timed again, so I better get in the driver's seat here. So the next section we're going to talk about is the occupational domain, which relates to personal satisfaction and enrichment for one's work. And just with a caveat that some people may be interested in work or volunteering or meaningful activities in general, or community participation. So while often the focus is work, we just really do want to broaden that out to meaningful participation in activity. Some people may and just to note that some people may experience profound occupational engagement, and that might look like people not participating in activities, people not have an emotional connection to the activities in which they participate, so they're just kind of waiting for things to occur. And we know that people who sometimes live in our systems do experience profound occupational disengagement that will need particular support. Of note that only 10 to 15% of people who live with significant mental health issues engage in employment, despite a desire to do so. And the literature indicates that work is a strong pathway to recovery. For example, a 10-year longitudinal study indicates that stable work reduced hospital and service systems costs. So that's, I think, a piece of work that we really do have to attend to. Working helps. The supported model of employment aims to help people find jobs and provide support to them once a position has been secured. And we heard a little bit about IPS a moment ago. Yeah, so occupational wellness relates to contributing one's unique gifts, skills, talents to work that is both personally and personally meaningful and rewarding, and in line with people's values. We extend this dimension, as we noted, to include the notion of meaningful activity in general. In other words, we promote the development of services that help individuals engage in activities that have personal meaning and may assist individuals in reaching their full human potential. Our recommendations included, and some may be a surprise to you, in keeping with the forthcoming psychosocial rehabilitation framework for British Columbia, that people have an array of flexible employment, volunteer, leisure activities, and supports that may include pre-vocational training, transitional employment, supported volunteer programs, social cooperatives or enterprises, supported employment and leisure, and meaningful and purposeful daily activities that engage people for their talents and their skills and their interests, satisfaction, challenges, and preferences. I'm just going to look at the comments for a moment as we ask for advocacy microsystem action are also incredibly important, agreed. Are there any government incentives for hiring people with serious mental illnesses? I think not at this point. And you know what? If I learn anything different, I will post that on this website. But to the best of my knowledge, at this point, the answer to that is no. And I know that other countries have tried that with varying successes, the UK in particular. So I will try and discern that, Tara. Thank you for that good question. I don't have that knowledge, but I'm thinking not. And we'll just see if anybody else has any other comments before we move on or thoughts. Catherine says there are wage subsidy programs through Opportunities Fund in BC. So Catherine, maybe you could just email us, to Matt or myself, some of that information, and then we can share that. Thank you for that. Opportunities Fund I'm familiar with, but I just can't pull up the details in my head at the moment. A federal program called Opportunities Funds, okay, thanks Eileen for supporting that, offers wage subsidies and training funds for clients with any disability, so broader disability perspective. Thank you for that. All right, so if you don't mind, just maybe, or I can go on the hunt and just find that information and put it on the website as well. MPA has always tried to hire a number of people who have lived experience. Thanks for that, Nona. I absolutely agree. Yes, and please, if you could just send any extra resources to Matt, we will place them on this website. Thank you. And I know several organizations are really committed to hire people with lived experience as well. And certainly we've seen the trend within the last 10 years of mental health systems actively hiring people with lived experience. Coast Foundation included, and amongst others, including Vancouver Coastal and Fraser Health and other. So Marie, I'll just take this. She noticed that Vancouver, there is more supported employment for clients with serious mental than everyone worked within a competitive employment. Are you not advocating that there should be funded employment sites that are truly for clients and are fully supported? We've had a bit of a change, Marie, in how we deliver employment services. So basically, we've had a shift that we now have employment centres that provide support for anybody who may have a disability, be it mental health or substance use or physical disability. And we can certainly speak about that some more. So we're advocating that employment supports are there for people. And you and I maybe can speak about that some more. If you just shoot me an email, we can spend some time and speak about that some more. Thank you for that question. Okay, so we're going to move into the physical domain, which we've divided into 3 parts. It's a rather large section, but just to say that research shows that people who live with mental illness and addiction have unmet physical health need that results in unnecessary reduced longevity. So we've mentioned that already. Physical activity, specific aspects to the brain for physical activity, which are of consideration in the provision of mental illness recovery and rehabilitation care. So just, I know that one of our committee members, Pat, who's here, is a real big advocate of this, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a snippet into that world, where Pat is a strong advocate based on work by Ratley that you see the reference there, talks about neuronal health for vigorous physical activity contributes to the repair and maintenance of brain cells, as well as counteracting the destructive effects of cortisol in neurons, and that Aerobic activity promotes growth of neurons in the hippocampus, supporting improvements in working memory. Complex and novel physical activities contribute to the strengthening and expanding of neural networks, improving working memory and problem solving. All that to say is we do a little physical activity and we get a little smarter. But we probably knew that, but it's certainly nice to see that within the literature. And so some of the other points just identified, it's an effective strategy for management of anxiety and depression, which I think is important. And physical activity provides opportunities for social inclusion, improving self-efficacy and self-determination, and can help in managing the withdrawal of symptoms. So all that to say, physical activity really can contribute to our health. And moving to the next slide, healthy eating. We know that clients who live with mental illness tend to have conditions that place them at a higher nutritional risk. Tragically, persons with serious mental illness are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from nutrition-related diseases such as heart disease and stroke, and have higher rates of diabetes. They have a higher risk of food insecurity due to poverty and other lifestyle factors, and often consume foods that may be higher in fat. Evidence shows that healthy eating helps prevent and manage chronic disease. However, lack of access to dietitian has been identified as a barrier to offering those nutritional services. So we've said this in other ways, but just to really consolidate that under the healthy eating physical domain, that eating better helps, although we're acknowledged that there, due to stigma and poverty issues, that eating well can be a real challenge. And the third section under metabolic syndrome notes that the prevalence of metabolic syndrome is higher among those with serious mental illness. Metabolic syndrome refers to a group of metabolic risk factors that increase the probability of developing heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. All of those things that we understand that people who live with mental health and substance use are more prone to. Research shows that metabolic syndrome is less likely to be diagnosed and treated with those with serious mental illness in comparison with the general population. And that, I think, for many of us, just there's a real sadness there that not only are people higher risk for these factors, but are less treated with these factors. So despite the fact that guidelines exist for people who live with mental health and addictions around metabolic syndrome. So we have these guidelines, but often we're not enacting them. And finally, both CBT and pharmacological adjunct therapies are effective in preventing weight gain. CBT is also effective in helping people lose weight. So we have good interventions and we know they make a difference, but often we are just not doing them in practice as well as we could do. And so under our recommendation sections, we've just kind of collapsed them all together. All aspects of service and users' well-being are recognized and self-directed where possible, so that people are, maybe through their wellness recovery action plan, attending to some of these issues. But we really want to increase the opportunity for participation in physical activity through supportive programming, increasing access to dietetic services with community mental health settings, to improve peer involvement in program delivery, design, and evaluation, opportunities for service users to practice cooking skills and gain confidence, standardized policies and procedures for metabolic monitoring with consistent monitoring, so not just doing it once, but following up 6 months, 1 year later. Support to develop healthy sleep hygiene and rest relaxation activities, smoking cessation, promoting that intervention, and promoting harm reduction at all sites. Opportunities for peer and staff education related to wellness programming, and to engage in research demonstrating the efficacy of the programs that we're advocating for. And finally, a system to track clients' progress in establishing physically active lifestyles. So what we've seen within our system is that sometimes there are programs to promote physical activity, to monitor the metabolics, but often those two systems do not talk to each other. So it's difficult for the client to really monitor their progress a long time.
Question there from Lori.
Thank you, Laurie.
Slide up.
Do you mean by pharmaceutical treatments really we're trying to focus on things like CBT, on promoting healthy lifestyles, and really often to maybe make the focus less on reducing weight, but on feeling better, and maybe on circumference. So measuring somebody's hip circumference or tummy circumference to really help people monitor their own health and wellness. So rather than pharmacological treatments, but more physical interventions. Mary adds that clients often complain that healthy food, fresh foods, and meat are not affordable. Precisely. And food donated to food bank is often outdated. Education on shopping and cooking meals may be beneficial. So absolutely acknowledge, Mary, what you're saying. Doug adds, how would you integrate metabolic into PSR programs? So we have one amazing program that we could talk at length about, but for early prevention and intervention program where it's just commonplace, people get metabolic monitoring, they get an focus on developing physical activities, and they are definitely integrated, and they have developed their system in that fashion, truthfully. So they have measured for it up front and at the end. Excellent idea, as well as label reducing sodium, hidden sugar. Agreed. I have 1 minute left, so I just need to move on. So thank you for those great comments. Keep them coming. I appreciate it. Finally, the social domain. We are going to move back to Allison.
So the social domain, connectedness and belonging with others in community and well-developed support system. The impact of stigmatization is an important and powerful barrier to social inclusion. Social barriers for people with mental illness, such as medication side effects, social isolation, and the inability to sustain or create relationships, can lead to a decrease in social wellness. Essential evidence-based interventions promoting social inclusion include the need to maximize access to work, leisure, education, and family life. Help the person to realize their strengths. Help the person to act on their strengths, talents, and interests in communities of their choice. Reduce barriers to community participation, including overcoming self and social stigma. Recreational, occupational, pet therapy enhancement, peer support work, and family-friend community engagement are specific interventions that support community integration. Social wellness can be defined as the interrelationship between people with communities. It involves having the skills required for communication, cooperation, and community integration, along with the adequate support. So some of our recommendations were to encourage social interaction, to reduce social isolation, and to build a sense of community by situating programming in communities of choice with the least amount of professional support as possible, increasing programming that includes both family and more broad community involvement to promote stronger sense of connectedness, reciprocity, and support, providing leisure and recreation programming and skill building, i.e. building friendships, helping people identify how they may wish to contribute to their communities, providing peer support to facilitate a sense of hope, encouragement, and role modeling of positive social skills. So do you have an example that you can share with us of a social domain recommendation? So an example would be the Open Door group. And a lot of programs in the mental health community have lots of different kinds of social activities offered throughout the year that are related to a variety of celebrations, so Christmas activities and those kinds of things. CMHA is another one. So Tara writes, is there a socialization skill workbook? It sounds condescending, however, it's facilitating these groups is sometimes difficult to give feedback. We don't really have a socialization skill workbook, do we? Per se, like for Vancouver Coastal Health?
For Vancouver Coastal Health, I don't think so, but I'm thinking some of the old recovery workbooks by Spaniel that would be available on the PRA website might be helpful. Anybody else in the room might have other suggestions? Lieberman et al. Did a lot of work on social workbooks in that realm, and that was probably in the late 80s, I believe. Liberman. So if you Google that name, you will likely find those as well. And I think many of us over the years have just developed some homegrown things that have gone over 8 to 12 weeks. Again, I mentioned earlier on the Action Over Inertia workbook by Dr. Terry Krupa et al., 2009. You will get that through Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists. So there's got some good worksheets there that might help as well. And that's all I can pull out of my brain at this moment. Good question. Thank you.
So I found a social skills training guidelines document by Lieberman that I'll put on the website.
Okay.
So the spiritual domain, expanding our sense of purpose and meaning in life. Individuals accessing the mental health system have expressed a need to include spirituality as part of their process of recovery and well-being within mental health services. However, multiple barriers exist in addressing spirituality in mainstream community mental health services, such as a perceived lack of spirituality knowledge among service providers, concerns regarding how spirituality is defined, and concerns about maintaining healthy boundaries and misuse of power. Mary writes, just to let you know about the social domain, the Canadian Mental Health Clubhouse is also a great resource.
Right.
Spiritual recommendations. We need to provide visible signs that spiritual conversations are encouraged. Establish a system-wide framework for conversation that is open, inclusive of diverse spiritual preferences, and that creates safety for all. Develop professional guidelines for practice, including ways to determine healthy from unhealthy spirituality. Establish a resource base for healthcare providers, describing ways to network with and make referrals to a variety of spiritual services in the community. And I have to say, it's actually really kind of funny. My daughter, I don't know if you ever remember that show about who's smarter than the fifth grader. Well, my daughter's in grade 5, and she was studying the actual, different kinds of things about Canada. And one of the comments that she was studying was that Canada is supposed to be the place where people come to be respected for all different kinds of spirituality. And so that was one of her things that she needed to be studying on the test. So it's kind of interesting that we are still advocating for that for mental illness, but yet we are actually the country that's supposed to have that in place already. Anyways, please share your comments. Louis, I would imagine, is the Art of Living program provides relaxation techniques and have had success working within the prison system. Good point.
Great.
Yeah, she's given us a website.
That's great. You may be familiar that for those of you who work and live in Vancouver Coastal Health, I'm really proud we've done some amazing work in the spiritual domain, headed up by Dr. Sharon Smith, and that work is probably publicly accessible. I'm looking at Sue.
I have it all. I could
Yeah.
give you the.
So if anybody would like any information on that, maybe just contact us and we'll get some of those links from Sue. But collaboratively with a number of people receiving services and family members, they developed a wonderful visual and service program supports as a result. Really excellent piece of work over probably about a 4-year period, I'd say. So really cool stuff. So we'll just wait for 1 or 2 more comments, and then we'll just do a little review and then take more questions or comments, and then if we missed anything, just maybe bring it back. And maybe we'll just go ahead and do that, and then we'll just offer question time at the end. So just to let you know that we did a brief overview of the context in which we find ourselves. So we let you know that we observed that people were gaining weight, that people were, sadly, the longevity was impacted for people, that people had increased incidence of diabetes, that the literature was really saying, and the psychosocial literature was really saying that interventions that were behavioral, that were helping people promote a healthy lifestyle and reduce weight were working, and that a number of our BC documents and Canadian documents spoke about recovery and wellness and well-being. It was the core of the 2009 document, 2012 strategy document. And then we just shared with you the dimensions that we'd found with SAMHSA. We offered you the literature, a brief synopsis of the literature that we found in those areas. And then we shared with you what we thought were our recommendations. And we, I hope, asked you for some comments and thoughts, and maybe helped us understand that maybe we missed some things, or Any comments that you would have, we're so happy to distill them. As Sue Gerries had mentioned at the outset, this is the first time we've brought this work out into the public. So we really wanted to try and take SAMHSA's ideas and then put them into action. So that's what we've been trying to do. So this committee's been in operation for about 1.5 years. So it's taken some time for people from different perspectives to come together to build our collective document, which is currently about 25 pages long, but we would really love to hear from you. So with that in mind, any comments, discussion? We know that it's a bit of a balance to try and keep our health and wellness together, and so I offer you a little picture of a friend's dog who is in UBC, and well, what a cool dog. You know, you just got to say that this is kind of, it's a bit tricky to
big.
think big. All right. Yes. So Kelly, thanks for your kind comments. According to the Privacy and Freedom Commissioner, police may provide police contacts that could include contacts involving mental health and their criminal record checks. I had a client who withdrew his appointment for working with seniors because of other than conviction section on the form, yet another system. Oh, thank you so much, Jim. I so concur. We had an employment day recently at Douglas College to launch the series of 6 webinars I mentioned earlier in the session. And there was a lot of discussion about this topic. My understanding is that piece of legislation is under review. And so we're hoping as it goes forward, although it was intended to be a positive, helpful piece of legislation, in fact, it really has created a barrier, as you rightly say. So let's hope that disappears. Thank you for bringing that up. So anybody have any other comments? Have we missed anything? Do you think this work might be helpful to you at all? Do you have other resources? So thank you for the resources people have already given, but are there other resources that we should know about? Any questions for any of our panelists? We're here and we're with you for the next 15 minutes. So if you have anything that you wish to offer, we're here. Let us know. And Dexter is not with us, but he's with us in spirit. That's the dog in the picture. So thanks for those comments. Webinars are inspiring. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, good to know criminal record checks. Yes. Yeah. Thanks a bunch. Great information. Sure. We love to hear critical feedback. We had a group of us doing this presentation today, so we were just very keen to get the timing right, but hopefully that worked for you. It's a lot of material to cover. We recognize that. So thank you for your kind words. Thank you. Can you send us a presentation? Yes, the presentation will be uploaded. Dear Matt uploads it, so you can just download it at any point. In terms of our committee work, we are not sure what our next steps are in truth at this point. We wish to tidy up the larger document. We'll probably need to run it through our own mental health system to get full approval, and then we shall post it likely on our website.
It'd be nice to actually get it published sometime.
Get it published, yes, and we would like to publish about it, absolutely, yes. Thanks, Matt, for adding that information. Appreciate it. So we were thrilled to know that we had over 70 people with us today, and we know that in those rooms there are more than one person in many rooms. So thank you kindly. We are hoping that this way to learn is useful for you. If you have any feedback, how we can do it better, you wanna do a webinar at any point, just please let us know. We want to hear about that. We look forward to your active participation in the 6 free webinars coming up around employment. We have some amazing experts who have offered their time to talk to us about that. So do sign up. Thank you. And we're hoping you'll think about the upcoming conference too, and maybe submit abstracts or attend the conference. Evaluation survey, will be sent out shortly. So we do like to know how we did. So we really value your feedback as a result.
Yeah.
Sabine says, nice overview. Good. Okay. Great. So just if you're interested in doing a little bit of follow-up reading on the bus on the way here today, I was doing just some rereading a really nice article that I'm going to just give you full reference for now. But it was really helpful. It's called Impact of Wellness Recovery Action Planning on Service Utilization and Need, a randomized controlled trial. Primary author is Dr. Judith Cook, who you saw referenced several times here. And this is December 2013 in the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Journal. But I think it really helps us understand more deeply the power of the Wellness Recovery Action Planning tool as helping people engage in their own wellness planning. And not only planning, but implementation as well. So it was just a nice reminder that some good literature out there supporting not only wellness recovery action planning, but also the whole focus on wellness, which I think sometimes in our healthcare organizations, it's hard to do. We're just a little bit busy, so hard to do that. So as I see, I'm not seeing any more comments. So, oh, we have one on the floor here. So Pat, do you want to ask your question or make a comment?
You can do it.
Yeah, so Pat, who's our family member who's been on our committee, is going to say something.
I'm going to say something. Morning, everyone. Just by way of wrap up, I know that this is has been a fairly not academic approach to, but and sometimes scholarly approach to the challenges of rehabilitation and recovery for people with mental illness and substance use. But as a family member, I would really encourage you as practitioners and clinicians to take this information that you've had today in this discussion, but think about it on a very, very personal level for the individuals that you deal with, remembering that each person you deal with is unique and has their own unique set of needs. And you've been asked lots of questions throughout this process. And if you can think about those questions, but think about not in general broad terms for how you're practicing, but really take some of it and think about how does this apply to this one particular person, my particular client, Mary. How can I take this information and use it to help her? I think to go from the broad and general to the specifics of the individual is the important next step. Thank you.
Thanks, as always, Pat, for your wonderful words of wisdom. Appreciate it. And I'm just checking, see if there are any other questions or comments, and I don't see. So let's close it down, and hopefully we will see you December 10th for the next webinar. Look forward, 10:30 usual time, and that will be looking at thinking about from the disability perspective and from psychosocial rehabilitation, competencies, thinking about how we can help people with complex needs gain employment and keep employment. So thanks very much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.